This will probably be my last polling analysis update, and it's huge because it's cementing what I've been saying. Sort of. See, on the one hand, this is the perfect opportunity to test what I'm saying, which is why I'm doing this. We have long-term aggregate modeling in multiple states. We have a single reliable poll taken within a few days of the vote. Which one is more accurate? I claim that reading the single snapshot will be more accurate than the aggregate modeling, and you can throw all that out the window. On the other hand, I need to bring my cognitive dissonance back in. The poll is suggesting, across the board, that Clinton is doing better with self-identified liberals, while Sanders is doing better with self-identified conservatives. This is patently ridiculous, and could only be explained in three ways. The first is that Clinton's attacks on gun rights, for example, are backfiring and people just aren't listening to Bernie at all. Do gun rights really overpower health care? This is crazy. So it could be that, Clinton is framing the narrative so well that the fact that Sanders is clearly the more liberal candidate is not being heard over everything she's doing to try and paint him as the more conservative one. Second is that this poll is a part of the rigging process, in which case the Clinton campaign is trying to lower expectations ahead of a careful grind and halt operation. Or the third is that it's just some kind of weird anomaly, which, because it's so consistent, is hard to accept. Okay? So we've either got, it's the same basic split. It's either, the fact that the electorate is just overwhelmingly ignorant, or it's not an accurate reflection of what people are thinking. Okay? But see, I can't analyze this thing under the assumption that it's a vast right-wing conspiracy against Sanders, even if my gut tells me it is. Okay, I need to analyze it on face value, but I can caveat it, okay? He's actually not doing so badly. She's under 60. Actually, sorry, right now I'm talking about Florida. So in Florida, he's actually not doing so badly. She's under 60. The polling seems to be polling women higher than the population, which maybe says something about the sample. If he keeps her under 60, it's a hole he can climb out of if he wins big in Illinois. But there's reason to think he may be able to keep it under 55 too. The flip side is turnout amongst old people, but I have a criticism of the modeling on this point too. While they are correct to point out that turnout is higher around the age of 65, they fail to model the decline in turnout that sets in as age increases. So when they model 65 to 70-year-olds as more likely to vote, that is correct. But when they model 85 to 90-year-olds as also more likely to vote, that's wrong. They only gather data in a 65 plus age category. They simply don't know how much of the over 65 sample is also over 80. Okay. So over the last few years, it has been publicized that polling firms have screwed up predictions by overweighting young people. I believe that there are also examples, such as the last provincial Ontario election, where they overcompensated by overweighting old people. Okay, you need to watch for that in Florida. But that doesn't change the reality that a win here for Sanders is keeping Clinton to 60, and a big win is keeping her to 55. Okay, that's reasonable expectations in Florida, is that she will win. It's just by how much, right? Now, how about North Carolina? Well, they're claiming she has a big lead amongst early voters. Again, if Hillary was going to rig this, how would she do it? But still, again, if she's really only pushing 50% on the yet to vote, then an optimistic scenario suggests he can keep her under 55 if he can get that turnout up. What I said about Michigan was that you should expect her to win, but that it will be closer than expected. I'm saying the same thing about Florida and North Carolina. I think there's a higher level of expectation that she win these states, but make of it what you will. It will be suspicious if North Carolina looks like Alabama. Should we call it Alabamistan? Those are Soviet polling numbers. As the polls don't support that, and perhaps the polls didn't really support the large margins in these other southern states either. It will also be suspicious if she wins Florida by a large margin when the polls are steady to narrowing. So watch for that. Illinois. All of the factors put together, including overpolling women again, make it clear Bernie Sanders will win Illinois. The question is by how much? 55, 60, 65? It's all about turnout. He needs delegates. So if you're in Illinois, then get out and vote. How well he does in Illinois will likely determine how seriously he's taken after tomorrow. Another thing to watch in Illinois is that this poll suggests that his support amongst blacks is statistically the same as his support amongst Latinos. Now, he may lose both, okay? But the point is that they're the same. That is massive, as it is the first sign of Hillary's weird lock on blacks breaking up, and strongly suggestive that this might be about Southern conservative blacks rather than blacks altogether. It will be suspicious if she wins Illinois by any margin. Bernie ought to be favored here. Missouri. Bernie Sanders will also win Missouri. And note that they are again oversampling women. It's almost like they're doing this on purpose. Again, get out and vote. It's all about turnout. It will be suspicious if she wins Missouri by any margin. Bernie ought to be favored here. Ohio. Ohio has 12% undecided. How are you undecided on Hillary Clinton? Okay, so what that means is that you want to vote for Sanders but can't get past your programming or don't want to admit it over the phone. Advantage Bernie. They oversampled women again too. With all the factors, I also think that Bernie ought to be favored to win Ohio, but it will be closer. So get out and vote. That's going to be the difference is turnout. So again, it's not completely clear what this poll is. Either it's the decent post-Michigan poll I was waiting for and it's confirming my analysis, or as a part of Hillary's faltering attempt to fix the nomination and meant to lower expectations for a run on the polls that she expects will overpower her attempts to stuff ballot boxes. Either way, it's clear that Bernie is surging and that his ability to win tomorrow depends on turnout. I think they basically split the delegates for the day and move on to the next fight, but the momentum puts Sanders in a stronger position to gain delegates in New York and Pennsylvania. Okay? But it was always about California. So do I really want to go to that? I've checked out enough stuff online, enough live material to conclude that it is mildly interesting in a certain context. Like I don't want to say it's going to be like lame. I think that it's more that it's going to be like boring. I think you're looking at long periods of just scattered noise. And the only real drawing point to this is who it is that you're dealing with, right? So the only reason why I'm being pulled is due to the name recognition, and it's kind of a false pull. I don't want to say they're advertising it wrong because I mean bands change members, right? And this incarnation of Faust has been around for longer than the initial incarnation was, right? So let's keep that in mind too, right? It's just that it's not nearly as engaging. It's long pieces of formless sound. It seems to have a bit of an industrial twist to it, kind of like a little bit of a New Boston feel. In terms of smashing sheets of metal together and these sorts of things. It could be. I mean, if it was New Boston, it would be a lot more ordered, a lot more interesting to listen to. This is more open and freeform. It's not a style of music that I really have a lot of interest in. I know people have misunderstood me in the past in that regard, but I like my abstract music to be composed. I'm really not much of a fan of improvised music at all. I never have been. And anyone who has thought that I was a fan of improvised music misinterpreted music that was written as improvised music, which is easy enough to do if you don't have a trained set of ears. it is very much hard to tell the difference between uh, you know, smashing on a xylophone with a purpose and just smashing on a xylophone if you don't know anything about smashing on a xylophone. So, and that's just a silly example, but you get the point. People have been saying that about jazz for decades, right? Is that you can't understand jazz unless you understand jazz. Um, and the problem with this particular type of music is that there's a lot of people that don't understand it, um, but are there for sort of aesthetic purposes, or I don't know what they're doing up there, banging again. Strangeness. Anyways, there's a lot of people into this kind of thing, and it's just like empty noise, right? To them, it's about an aesthetic, maybe even a bit like a lifestyle or some other stupid thing like that, right? So, I've known people like that as well, and they don't know anything about music. They don't know what they're listening to or why it's trash, or they just like the idea of being involved in art. It's just total pretension, right? So, and that's what the show was likely going to be pulling. And it will be, pulling pretentious people from all over the age spectrum, as well, no doubt, as a few older people that were really loving their early records. Um, I'm not as familiar with Faust as I am with some of the other music from the era. Like, I'm not as familiar with Faust as I am with Can, um, or even Kraftwerk. Certainly not as familiar with Faust as I am with with the English prog. I'm really much more of an English prog fan. Stuff like Genesis and King Crimson, um, Pink Floyd. The German stuff is really not. Um, well, I don't think it's nearly as good. With, even with the major exception of Can. Can is interesting and everything. I like a couple of the Can records, but they're not in the same category as the English prog acts. It's um, the English stuff is head and shoulders beyond anything that the German acts ever did. Um, but even at the time, you had that layer of pretension attached, um, to this sort of empty perception of art, right? So if it was weird and you didn't understand it, then it was art, rather. But like, if you did understand it, you would have realized that it wasn't as profound as you claimed. Which is not to take anything away from Faust's early work so much. Their early work is interesting, and there are some ways in which it did. It was influential, but it's not. Or at least I don't find it's as enjoyable to listen to as some of the other music from the era. So this is less of a big deal to me as some other band might have been. Um, Really, to be honest with you, it's not much of a big deal to me at all. I'm really not, and never really have been a Faust fan. Um, like I say, I have enjoyed a couple of their records. I think maybe they're a little bit overrated. Um, I wouldn't really cite them as an influence. Um, but I would note that this is the only chance that I'll ever get to see them. I just don't. I don't feel that what I'm seeing here is worth the effort and money with all of the other things involved. I suspect that if I go to the show tonight, it'll be an overnighter. I don't want to do that. Nor do I want to go and leave early. That would be pointless. It's a little bit more then your average show is a $20 show, which means it's $30 in Canadian. I gotta pay uh, border costs and everything else. So if I go to the show, it's gonna cost me like $60 or $50 anyways. Um, and I don't. It's not worth it to me. um, this is the kind of thing that I would be more likely to pay, $5 to $10 for in a small bar. Um, I mean, they are playing a small bar. I wouldn't um, go so far out of my way to see this for what it is. Maybe if I was certain that they were going to be playing all older material, um, I would be a little bit more inclined. But I think it's clear that they're not. So, um, that's always a decision that a band like this has to make, right? Are they touring new material and playing new material, or are they, doing the oldie circuit? Um, I'm sorry if your new material was really strong, and you might even disagree with me on that point. I would be excited to hear it, but I really think that the material they've done since the Reformation is not comparable, or at least what I've heard of it is not comparable, and I'm not at all excited about you know spending $50 and getting stuck overnight to see it. So I will be staying in instead, and that's the end of that. So what am I doing then? Well, um, I've got to catch up on some editing still, quite a bit of it. And I got a little bit of a head start on the history wipe, but I didn't really get much of anything off. That will be something I'll need to do a little bit of tonight as well. So it's, um, I mean, I've been out a lot the last couple of days. I think I'm just kind of, excited about staying in and just vegging for a little bit. I'll need to do some groceries tomorrow, but I'm not sure that I'll be back in Detroit until the beginning of April at this point. They're talking about ways to mess with the data collection services. Sorry, I took a swig there. I guess I should wait till that cools down a little anyway. So it warms up a little anyways. They're talking about um, ways to mess with your quote unquote big brother data collection services, the intelligence, surveillance state, all these sorts of things, right? And I actually haven't listened to their proposals yet. I suppose it's going to be a combination of cryptography and avoidance. I think that the real solution to this is a lot easier than people might want to believe. Um, the data that they use is only as useful as it is accurate, right? So they want to collect this and that and put it all together. The best way to mess with them is to make their data base full of wrong information. Okay. So what that means is to actually bombard them with information. Give them tons of information. Right? Give them more information than they ask for, but make sure it's all wrong. That will essentially make what they're doing useless. See, here's the thing. That's what the people that they're actually the people that they claim they're going after are actually going to do because they're going to know that, right? So when you're filling out an online profile, use a fake name. Tell them you went to a school that you didn't go to. Tell them that you live in a city that you don't live in. If you can spoof your GPS, do it. Give them the information. Give them all the information they ask for. Just make sure it's wrong. Right? So that when they go and look up that information, they have very little faith in its accuracy. And, for that reason, they'll stop collecting it. It's a very simple solution. It's far, far more simple than you might believe. But it is the best thing you can do. These other solutions that they want to throw around are going to be of varying usefulness. I have very little faith in cryptography because I know it can be beaten through brute force, and I know that consumer level um, processing speeds are a fraction of what the NSA has, right? So, um, you know, there was that, talking about Apple, Apple's cryptography. I would be shocked if there wasn't a data center somewhere in, suburban Virginia that can crack just about anything you give it, within 2 or 3 days. Um, just simply by brute force, because they have a data center with 10,000 supercomputers running. I mean, supercomputers relative to what we would consider, um, relative normal computers, right? Processors running at that a million times what you can buy at a consumer level. Stuff that'll be classified for the next 100 years. um, that's really all you would need, right? So I mean, and all these other kinds of things that even if you could, you're not addressing the problem, right? Which is that they're collecting data. Um, I say give them the data, just make sure it's wrong. And if everybody did this, if they collected a massive database full of useless information, it wouldn't take long before they pulled out and they stopped doing it. Thanks to daylight savings times, the sun was finally starting to come up at a decent time. They put it back, or put it forward an hour, and we got these long, dark mornings again. I don't know. I don't know how important saving energy really ought to be. I think that moving to renewable energy sources ought to be more pressing concern. Anyways, it's about 6:15. The sun won't be up for another hour, unfortunately, and sadly. What did I get done today? Not a lot. Well, I guess I was able to upload 2 full vlogs. One of them was very long, an hour and a half long. And I was able to clear out some empty space in my history, which really didn't amount to much, but it was something that did need to get done. So hopefully tomorrow I'll get some more actual archiving done, but at the same time I need to catch up with my editing too. So whether I drag it out or I kind of do it all at once, it needs to get done. And I think I'd kind of rather catch up and maybe even get a little bit ahead so that I can run through the rest of it. So I might have a day or two more worth of really staunch editing. A part of the why am I talking to the wall again? The reason is because I never think these conversations are going to be very lengthy. Um, yeah, I might have a couple more days worth of editing, but the other thing is tomorrow is the important part of the election. Actually, what I was going to say is that there's a lot of reacting, and that's going to be true for the next several vlogs, and then it's going to transfer over to a lot of concerts. So lots of stuff to do anyways, and it's going to slow me down. There's no question. So, but I mean, it's got to get done. Um, this phase of reacting is going to be finished soon, and well, as I've mentioned, I'm working my way off of YouTube entirely. I don't know. Maybe I yelled loud enough that I smashed some you know energy through the ether or something. I don't know. I know that the changes they've made to YouTube suck. So um, I'm kind of done with that platform. Um, right now, I'm just concerned about, like I say, collecting all of my lost rambling into one spot. Um, I will be putting up my own site, and that's where I'll be doing most of my ranting. So I'm out for the night. I'll be up sometime after the sun comes up. I've got some grocery shopping to do tomorrow, and I'm also going to want to get some cleaning done in here in between editing runs. So that's something to think about too.